Ali. Maise malungil tutau, otru ule ungil tutara klay, ma arbekro rubukul bela lang artiang, kumesa artiang ir turong, mobak, wer belau, peo, rungul bay, nurap, rakamsik, irakabaw, maardoor. Magkatamal mereka sudah rubukul bela nosil lamanggia dari al tutau, malungil tutau mora senator inabo, ma speaker Anastasio marugul delegates. Ako mese koma true me iman artia speaker akna sa imor kami adibu selengara. Ngaria quorum. Dire kan malungil total moral governors. Ako mese artia governor Orior ma arbek governor sang artia ngayaw ma ngiwal. Ang song sabat teri. Ngaram lungu ingat pang hato obey ma ayang al mairay mo orior mangarad. Mal mason soron. Oy, why say mason soron. Mabliliong. Dire kan mal tukbet sungil total uklo sa ela masid bela lo bangged bilung ma pere klay ma bekel mas. Mal masaul si lo bangged ra tutaw mal mereka suliw. Dire kalmal mereka suliar lighters, speakers, no si join lagi dari al tutau, ma kumbe sengaria baby ada midak milsang irmang kem lamor, amina Moses uludong, ongge di imol ada midian artiang, oh, mereka omte ertir rogui, kita of course kadang artian al tutau. Le sera agotrurior minister udui ma radala compact magida amno se der ngara blura lugile witness ersel dam baseng wablo da saing ersel agreement tra magela blur belau ma blur amrigel el girela compact di bokora maskami atrigibel rexir tialurior gidam dengel wase sera 2020 yang amlo mu la urol girela review ra kampak tergit egel dong sing review ang aringira egel lo trui mei marra kar argila kampak mangarira narira sel 2009 egirel mutel el wado uril girela 2024 ya uri reseng mori sel 40th anniversary which is mutel trui ra kar ngar matat ing mori sel last sedro se selog email sel 50th year. Kita ulmura urere de tara swadal di misi ase tiang amle team effort raklay. Kadamle makaro rogul lorol girel. Ma kotrul dirikal mal sokal mereka sulela sulela rubugul belau. Lemna regel te level legom kado aisa gel uk bladot tergokl. Yang mereka sulir sel babingil direkan mlel ngaregel tukol ngar alsel taramal tukol mer alsel ase alin dia kamobe sel tukol girel ngaria ngasaklel raga audo drabek raga lol tirak sel wal ngasaklel ara ladang ok inflation mang sadro eso ase sei mendirekal ngar alsel tial agreement di direkal mal sadar mereka sulira other olbira galulaw kita amle betul time betul kadam lora Washington DC mkado mitra adro olbil kemaya lo ase ngari adra senator bangyad senator Mario ma senator ini apa amle betul lo bangyad almong direkal delegate alul kama of course delegate Marino ma kumra lo ase Miguel te alu kilometer tigel adra kongkone sera peluram rigel. Kita sera bodomur selu daseng tial domestic tial agreement te atara amlege adrut maklira agotel buil sel daseng MOU. MOU awadi lol trok laigel di sela udo dal ngar al sela kampak. Mese blodo saing eri sera agotel buil. Ya MOU awaldi selu wadim lekadebel lom sodel wal di lort rokla el di sel audo no e gira del morsel full agreement mung sera da saing em oyun momre gal mera sel initialing ceremony mlani rang rul mother tel lomre gal longeru rurior amlani documental sel agreement amlek me del erul dartel page agreement ya so dan mera sule la tim rigidra trial me negotiate el ngilu sel agreement el me mot mautro mesrie mga sadari mung wal sedel tibel di muy al di lui el page aling mle erul dart el page do bal me lui el page ya se amle mring lu el tial to of course radram rigela al sumung tomes era blur bela walo to goro basel hage lo ase ma blur marshal ma blur fsm ngo sisul hage do bang digi amle mring el fight ro ase dia dia kama ma uk ngodo regel baby rablu aigel gibra makatmok rablu mam el uk oratel rablu mam ma aigel el gimoru le lortau taureora ol tirak la aigel recommendation era ar economist ma ar semong ma egidamru audit report ngol tirak la aigel rogue ngidar masad ra aigel tokal mole terkama mringil mode kal sebamal lo mal momringer kamam mang kadamaral mereka sulel tial tim bergita mereka sulela minister uduy ma minister betul ambasador kyotal ngartelo maget mesel erangala tim bergita direktor ataksa elwe igeda mesel erangala tim bergita akampakt governor vote mang direkalul menteri ak mereka sulir sel el blagareng artir ma of course trial adra la el tira alun ng seorgit tugobet sengel lulum tergit el ngara Aiken Camp ngel el Jeff Farrow nge mnaram rigel mal mnemri loro ngel ambassador ma negotiator gid ma diregal Lauren Henry nalmut mora selurera ram rigel ngodi mrenga sulel lartial lomlmi aurior sel maral mring lurora mutiara agreement le rule dart el page el me o sende kay kay yim kay yo bal mel mersel agreement tergida al bangari rel al sils mang maradi sokal mring asulir mring asulir adre belau el milstirera hacer claura marar kamiwa adra blur belau al mortian negotiating el timrgid mo mosir ureurerin ma bayel al sils en so adun wate al masa minister uduy ma minister betul matemo gora miskida gel ko magalom sodel agreement en aser moria gora kerma angera uri urse di al sebel al time di gunitra di sesel bung arsel lidera blura kwamel al time mal arsel mringel timer ti aliolt udo gadi mo le lakle edo dersidra ngalul malat kartir dan tidak mat to kanal giat ngal garablur belal ngarablur akwam le al time e gida amne asende kango dam sisi wa adur tuira ruwa maluk dida todo sia imolbung el gora di mamalat kerti logyo le laklang nu sulang amen ma waise minister udu yak pek maulan mskaw ka ma minister betul bobski da igel details sertial agreement igel ko magalom sodel
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Reklai. Good morning, Speaker and delegates who are here today. Good morning to two senators that we have. Chairman Inabo, thank you for joining us to Papua New Guinea. We just arrived. We just arrived last night from the signing. So we have circulated copies of the signed compact review agreement to both the Senate and the House for their review. And we will be starting with this event, starting to make some public appearances and explain to the public what's in the agreement that we have worked on these past few months. Let me start by repeating what the President has said. Our Compact of Free Association began in the mid-90s, and in that agreement, it called for reviews every certain number of years. There was a review that was called for after 15 years, and that was what we refer to as the 2010 review. This year, we're reviewing a little early. The review period is actually 2024, which is next year. And this is what we call the 30th year review. And the compact calls for a 40th year review, and also doesn't say anything about a 50th year review. So I think it's important to know that while our agreement that we are dealing with now is for a financial package for 20 years, it doesn't mean that we will not have a review in the 40th year. One thing that we did make sure of in this review is that we do call for a review in the 50th year. And also, we consider the agreement to continue past the 50th year. And that's always subject to the review, what both sides agree. The agreement focuses on our needs. The needs are basically the same as the original compact: education, health, and justice. But we've also added climate change, which is something new that we felt was important for the U.S. to recognize, and they have. And you'll see when I explain some details how it's reflected there. This review agreement also helps us with something that we've been experiencing, and we've asked the U.S. for help, and this is economic volatility. Our tourism industry has been like riding a roller coaster. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, so we're always trying to catch up every time something happens. When a typhoon comes, we have to stop working on developing the country and focus on recovering from the disaster. When the tourists stop, we have to stop focusing on growing the country and focusing on trying to find more tourists. So we are in that place now because of the pandemic and because of the drop in tourism. The U.S. recognizes we have a current economic challenge. If you were at the initialing ceremony in Rulmud, you would have heard Ambassador Yoon refer to it as a short-term liquidity crisis. It just means that right now we don't have money coming in, so we have no money to spend. So this agreement addresses the short-term challenge, but it also positions us for the long term. And one way it does that is by giving us inflation adjustment for the money they're giving us every year. And that, I think, is a significant benefit to our agreement. Because this agreement resumes economic assistance, every year we will continue to get money from the United States instead of using our trust fund. That will allow our trust fund to grow. And another way the U.S. is allowing us to get more money is instead of just saying $15 million a year, they will allow us to take a percentage of what's in the trust fund. So instead of 15, if our trust fund grows, we can take 4%. So if it's like 400 million, we can take 16 million, for instance. Then they have also allowed us to take more if we need. And that's 1.5% or 5 million, whichever is higher. They will allow us to take out of our trust fund. So if you remember, during the pandemic, Congress passed resolutions to ask the president, to ask the United States to allow us to take more money out of the trust fund. So using that idea, we asked the United States to give us this additional money when we have a crisis. So we're preparing ourselves for the future. Let me move now to a little bit more detail, and I hope I don't make this confusing for everybody when I talk about money. One reason why I mentioned the reviews, 15-year, 30-year, is because we did receive money after the 15th year. The money that we got, the total money, that's what we call the financial package, which was in the MOU that we signed months ago and that we have in this package, is 3 times what we got back in 2010. So whatever we got in 2010 times 3 is what we negotiated this time. And I'm very appreciative of Ambassador Yun because he said, you didn't get a good deal in 2010. There are many reasons why it wasn't as high as it should have been, but he agrees. And this review, he's making up for that. So we are getting 3 times more than in 2010. When we took office, President Whips and I became the minister, there was already a package that the government had worked on. That amount of money was unacceptable to President Whips. So he went to the United States and told them it's unacceptable, we need more. The United States found another negotiator, Ambassador Yun, and after working with him, we doubled what the government had negotiated in 2020. So for the 30th review, we started at a number and we doubled it, basically 400, and we have more now. Okay, so the total amount of money that we have negotiated in this package is $889.9 million, basically $890 million. We also say plus $2 million. Somebody was clapping, thank you. There is an additional $2 million. That was what we're supposed to get this year under the existing review agreement. So the United States is also giving us that money. Even though we've already negotiated a new agreement, they're still giving us what we were supposed to get under the old agreement. So it's plus 2. So let me break down the $888.9 million for you. There is $20 million a year that we will be getting starting October. The compact is supposed to start next year, October, but because we are having problems with our economy, the United States is willing to let us start 1 year earlier. So we will start getting $20 million every year from October. If you recall what's in our budget this year, we took $15 million from our trust fund to fund the budget. And we have another $15 million from loans that we borrowed. So we don't have to borrow. We don't have to take from our trust fund. The U.S. will give us $20 million in grant this year. The U.S. will also give us another $5 million for infrastructure. They will give us another $5 million for infrastructure maintenance. And right now, we are getting $2 million for infrastructure maintenance. So we've more than doubled that amount under the new agreement. Another way the U.S. is helping us, recognizing that during pandemic, we had to borrow money. We borrowed about $90 million. And the U.S. said, that's really going to hurt you because when you borrow so much money, you cannot borrow anymore. People say, oh, you borrowed too much, so you cannot get any more loans. But it also means that every year we have to pay back those loans. So we're really in a difficult situation right now. When I talk to economists and other people from the World Bank, they always ask about that. Your debt is too high. What are you doing about it? So we tell them the United States is giving money to pay down those loans. Altogether, they're giving us $10 million a year to pay down these loans that we took from the pandemic for 6 years. So I said we borrowed $90 million. They're giving us, over the course of 6 years, $60 million. We are also working on additional money outside of that to help lower how much money we borrowed. And the last amount of money that they are giving us is $50 million to our trust fund. The monies that we're talking about, the $10 million is for 6 years, and the $50 million is for 2 years. So a total of $100 million to our trust fund. So one thing that we mentioned, if you were at the Ngurulmud for the initialing ceremony, is every year we are getting a 2% increase of the money that we're getting. The 20 million and the 5 million for infrastructure, 5 million for infrastructure maintenance. Every year that will increase by 2%. So we start in the first year with 30 million, 20 million for operations, 5 million for infrastructure, 5 million for infrastructure maintenance. Every year, it'll increase by 2%. At the end of 20 years, it'll have increased from 30 million a year to 43.7 million a year. And I said, the U.S. has agreed to help us in the long term. One of the problems about giving us money is when the money stops. So in 20 years, the money is supposed to stop, go to zero. We told the U.S. this is a big problem for us in the future. So they said, well, we'll just let it continue for another 20 years. This is a very big achievement for us now to look 20 years down the road. We can't predict what's going to happen, but when we do a review, the people that are going to be handling that review are not starting at zero like we did. They're starting at 43.7 million. And that's going to give them a head start in that negotiation. So I think that is one of the biggest benefits the U.S. has given us from this review. While we have signed an agreement, you must understand that we are not finished with our work. Our review is scheduled for next year, not this year. So we have one more year to work. The reason why it may seem that we were rushed is because we're trying to get money starting this year. So it turns out of the 3 islands, Marshall Islands, FSM, and Palau, we're the first one to start. When ours finishes next year, theirs finishes this year. So I know FSM will be signing their agreement, I think this week. But the RMI is not anywhere near. They haven't even initialed their agreement. So I think it's good to show that Palau has been working with the United States and working hard to make sure that we take care of the problem that we're experiencing now, but still preparing us for the long term. From now until next year, we're going to take our time and work on getting federal programs and services again. So in this agreement, it says, whatever we're getting now will continue. Department of Education, Department of Health grants, other grants that we have been receiving will continue as long as they're available. So I think we don't have to worry about those, but there are certain programs and services that we have to negotiate. And those are the ones for FAA, Weather Service. Those require a separate document. And we have a draft, but the U.S. said, let's work on the other agreements, and then we will focus on these ones afterwards. But the U.S. has already said there are additional programs that you've been asking for that we will put in the legislation that they are working on now to give to U.S. Congress. And those include Veterans Administration benefits. There is also compact impact assistance that they will be making available to our people outside of Palau. We were not able to negotiate FEMA by this time. We will continue to try to get FEMA to take care of disasters like Guam is experiencing now. But there is another program under U.S. aid that RMI and the FSM already get, and that will be available to us. One of the biggest things I think that we were able to get support is the U.S. Postal Service. We see this as very important to our economy, and the U.S. In President Biden's budget included over $600 million for 20 years to the U.S. Postal Service to continue services to all three FAS. So I'm happy to report that support. The agreement is a little bit more detailed than the MOU that we signed in Los Angeles. A lot of the detail doesn't involve the money. It involves a lot of procedure. The one that we negotiated the hardest on, that was a very long document, was fiscal procedures. It's something that we've had since the beginning, but we updated in this agreement. And we made sure that in this agreement, United States recognizes Palau's efforts to be fiscally responsible. So in the agreement that we signed, there are references to our laws. And that's something that's the first in the history of our compact. And I think it shows, again, how supportive and the U.S. is, the Ambassador Yun was to our negotiation. And I think that's a significant thing to understand. It's more something that I deal with. How do I request the money? How do I report the money to the United States? But it is significant to the agreement. And those are the details that really took us a long time to negotiate, specific language. And those are mostly done by the lawyers. And you know how, who's a lawyer in the room? You know how lawyers are. You want a different opinion, you ask another lawyer. So this is what really took the longest time. And we were still working on the language until the day before the initialing of the agreement. And the reason why we couldn't distribute that agreement after Ngurulmut is because we have to make sure when we sign, the language is the same from what we initial to what we sign. For procedural sake, once we sign, this agreement goes to the U.S. Department to make it into a law, and then they will be giving that bill to the U.S. Congress for approval. So now to September, we will be working with U.S. Congress. That includes the President, myself, includes our lawyers in the United States, and other ministers who are working on federal programs. We will need to go and push U.S. Congress to support what President Biden will be submitting to U.S. Congress. Once they pass that law, then the compact review is done. So it's important that on our side, that our House of Delegates and our senators show support for this bill. Because as you know, if the U.S. Congress says, why isn't the Senate supporting this bill, they will probably delay action. So it's important to me that we show solidarity, we show that we are together, and we appreciate the work that the U.S. has done for us. And I'd like to ask my friends who are senators and the rest of the senators to if they have any questions, to come and talk with me directly. We can explain why things are the way they are, and then work together to try to show a united front to the U.S. government. I'll stop there. I'm sure if there's any questions you can ask me specifically. And let me ask Minister Metul to add a few items to what I have said in case he feels that it should be accentuated.
like so lang Minister Uday multo tayo President, ma Vice President, ma rokul leaders ng atyang. Akmo di ko ram ke koka kal mada sabebi regel points el chief negotiator adilung sa tabora ker mangir el sabil kora ko makaloger. Ako tulo ulit tial dangaringir lang sa loko del rak ra kora review tial compact agreement tergid. Indirekal sa el mornya ong 40th year sa longe warra kal bodome sergi. Sel longe yimra kata kata sal shurgi ogim. Sa longe yimra 50th anniversary. Ada kata sal ngania clear al dodu mung morngin dia andi kada madenget mung tiabe kerak ngania al dodu ngil compact mung atari mal amornya ogim. Ako terklol mle add on sel dil lira al sel tal compact. Aigel mle ko makal tukoraw do o masindir niya mora public safety, hospital, education. Swakal note mo Diyos isiyungi ma 2010 hindi ako do tol dal mora office of president, olbil, judiciary must state directly. Hindi geludo dal top dil lira climate change. Mga niya si eludo dal top dal sel tal compact dal mo ngasi tukora climate change. Aigel boyin tel dilu chief negotiator gid at yagid. Mneultuy ra akan tila economy regal nomre kal pandemic. Emlos edal convince am rigel mung government tergid ospi aklon ngeso. Mutul mes ratablol togoy mlan nga short term, medium term, and long term plan ra al sel tel agreement. Sel short term plan alom kodorngit mung liquidity crisis. Mlan nga mlo makasawdo dol soyis ra sa government tergid le tema la pandemic mlo makasar tourist magida mlo mal aswal da kadil national ma state to kuni Goro state mlo mal aswal makasar sa dol silis bo mo tamlo mes at mo kadam karang sa el amerikel ngosugi el $12 seguid el liquidity crisis da ngara alsel o sisul time kadam lo mes at mo kadam karang amerikel ol ngasorgi da sel ko long term plan mga isal immediate at mukadam karang ang mereka la maski daw load ra el al mereka del time lol nga sorgi del top dra situation tangar al sel ng global sel tangar ingnak me del kotiul milyon blodoleng lu ra government tergi dra kam lang mereka le deng e warak sige the long term plan include a tokol inflation factor sel inflation factor tergel madangir sa 2010 sel agreement sel inflation factor tergel tokol mereka la diulumu le punta ka bolsis inflation factor sel lelaw do del wal ngalegel sel ngalegel aw do del bodolan ngi rabek rak ling mas ara laklalo seguida dimna kala 2010 em na so years seguida taragel maklol telang tingil tel agreement mesel do mesel ang en wal sel financial package sel do del tingilura marigel ado misra 2010 sel mle last review en wal ngedel times aklung elaw do del bladungu. Kiting elo akme del, correct me if I'm wrong, ngerul dartum ogim el milyon sa 2010, el al time kadam mamlar akme del 890 million. Ungwal 3 times that amount. Osisul time, sira President Whip sa mga government, amle existing package, selguk mle luldur siya merigel mergid, amle akme del okwa madarngel milyon. Ewaldart mo ogim el milyon. Madomesra, to be exact, 432 million. Ngewaldart mo ogday, no, ngewaldart mo ogday el milyon, correct? Kada may erun milyon. El altime kada masawda 890, mong almost double that amount. Masiral Clora double. Masiral al President Whip sel kotor moram rigel. Al dilir mora government amrigel ak musel existing agreement del blel loder siam rigel mergid unacceptable. Mengulmu laurior segi del time el men el alsils. Wadawre nga sulir advisory group matrigel rogul merut datang tingil talurior. El ngilo unacceptable el double ngi mel al sil se kadam saudara 890 million. Ya osisiul time ikadadil adir sel inflation factor. Misal inflation factor ado mes ngi. En medat mo erul melyo la tarak. Correct? 2%. Musubes. Ngerul basen trabek rak ammo mada el al sel segi del udo trabek rak al bodola ngi. Akwara mo magi ko kakal masawa da ke udo del lulogoy. Masegi del breakdown or sel 890 million. Angarnya lu il melyo trabek rak al bodola ngi. Lomu rea okmong pas sella aram berigel ngomu ora Oktober el arrak. Amle close to telel el dorre other tial agreement at all sola amlasimul soyi supersel el budget ra Biden mensub el agagi del tokol dosa del motoko era Oktober. Sellu il melyo la mot magarni angania 5 million el udodra infrastructure ma infrastructure maintenance fund ma bododa ka roguing medalo del melyo la bodolay. Osisiul time amrigel amna recognize that musegi del short term liquidity issue gid are require gid del ngania igel blal sel dolab ngodmo haraw. Mingil ngem rigel mumbek kerra lomu ra apol toy talla ramrigel ngaria $3 million lelol marrak mukme del logol million apol baskid amrigel el mo haraw agegid del balset. Ya osisiul time segi del pas talla ingania ogimul million bos kita amrigel el mor al sela info at agid el trust fund dergid el momal el segid el trust fund le segid amo meter sel gu kuldasur mulwasei a future gid sel future plans dergid amornya udo del ngara al sela trust fund mesel short term liquidity amre del infuse raudo del mem godola bal harab al sede o mulu ra government dergid. At the same time, a long-term plan o umulura trust fund dergid matarak labasing ngani audo dal sa edam malasra alsel. Abebira maklol tukol tilur alsel tel agreement. Ako taigiro kul federal grants al dollar elang adi malmol. Dia katarngin mo matrop. Abay tukor alsel agreement tawasi al suku mengarnya ABS. El grant el ngidil blur amrike las el eligible morngi egite kodmo soyis bra alsel blugulak mung a existing angarngi dil ngarnya PS en sebe edal momalas a ongerung agidele ngarnya compact impact loro ngil direl mo soyis bra alsel tiangal mol ngoseu tirgel adra egal FAS states el keramrigel Mensiil ngani anges wel mortil direct. A Veterans Affairs, angaramot tiam leklol mondangir trigel other Palau mar other FAS nara al join a US military ngani egel benefits sel diakat si ilmay al ngara blurir tokuni Palau. Segi